welcome to today's episode. I'm here with James Twyman. He is my favorite author, like ridiculous.
That's amazing.
And the crazy thing is that I'm here in Mexico and I was going to be in Costa Rica, but my intuition said not yet. It said not yet. And I listened to it and I was like, okay, where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to be? And then our mutual friend Karen said, I'm going to Mexico and I'm staying with James Twyman. And I was like, what? That's my favorite author. I'm reading a couple books right now. And so if you don't know who he is, definitely Google him. He is a New York Times bestselling author of this book, The Moses Code. But my favorite book actually is, I'm such a geek actually, is The Emissaries of Light. And I've literally highlighted so much stuff in this book. It's so great. So thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy. It's been so great having your energy, your love, your light here at our Namaste Village community outside Ajijic, well, in Ajijic, Mexico. It's been just because this is a group of people, mainly retirees who are coming to live here and to retire in Mexico. So to have someone as young and vibrant as you has been a real gift.
Well, when I first got here, they were like looking at me like she doesn't belong here. And then I got to know me and they're like, oh, she does. She's an old soul. So I'd love to hear a little bit. So you've written so many different books and I'm writing some books right now. How, like, it's just the journey of your life.
Yeah, I think we have to write from our life, whether we're writing fiction or nonfiction. In different ways, we're telling the story of our lives. Now, it started for me in terms of books with Emissary of Light was my first book.
So
and what had happened before that, the pieces begin to line up, right? I've always been a musician. A friend of mine gave me this sheet of paper that had the peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world. I, in 1 hour, put all 12 of them to music. It was like a miracle. And I felt like I need to share this. And so I think it always begins with the impulse to share, to give. So I wanted to travel around the world to share these peace prayers and the songs. And I thought, well, maybe I should do this in countries at war. So I was invited to come to Croatia and Bosnia. And I had this remarkable adventure when I was there. And I came back. I remember wondering, well, what do I do with that? That was incredible. And I'll tell you something that I've never told anybody, actually.
Oh, awesome.
This is around the same time that the book Celestine Prophecy.
Oh, I love that book. Yeah.
Out. And that was another wonderful spiritual adventure. And I thought, mine was a pretty incredible spiritual adventure. Maybe I should just write it down. I sat down at a computer. It wasn't even, I didn't have a computer. I was broke. I sat down at a friend's computer and just began to write out what had happened. And I couldn't stop writing. I wrote the whole book in 2 weeks. And this also shows that when it's an alignment, when something is meant to be, it just happens effortlessly. I wrote the book in 2 weeks. The next day, I was in Boston. I was in a bookstore and with a friend just talking about this and saying, I don't know what to do. Do I get an agent? The woman behind the counter overheard the conversation and she said, well, my best friend is a literary agent and this sounds like the kind of book she would like. I was introduced to her later that day. She read the book and sold it the next day. So it took 2 weeks to write it and two days to sell it.
Yeah.
And that was just the beginning, obviously, but it just goes to show that if you just continue to follow the prompts, and the goal is not about me, but the goal is to share something, to illustrate something that we can all relate to, that we can all benefit from. And then not be attached to the results either. I always tell people who are just beginning to write it for yourself first. And if it does get out and touches millions of people or even hundreds of people, great. But write it for yourself. I know that the most impactful book that I wrote is called The Barn Dance. It was a very, very personal book. And people, people tell me that it's their favorite book. I can see why, because I had to put so much of myself into it. It was so much about my own healing and grief. And it connects with people. So once again, write it for yourself, and put all of yourself into it, not thinking about the audience, but thinking about what you need, and the audience will relate to it.
That's so interesting because so many people say the opposite, actually. Like, I've done some courses online that are like, you know what? Like, have your avatar in mind. What are they going through? But if it's just you, wherever you're at, like when I read this book, I read this like 2 years ago. I don't know how I found out about it, but I was like, I feel like I'm living the same life as him. I have to meet this guy, just because you were listening to your soul and the intuitive nudges, and you were on all these adventures. And I was just like, I feel like I'm living this, but in the now.
Yeah.
And you wrote this like 20 years ago or something, right?
26, 27 years ago, something like that.
It's amazing. I have to read this book.
Yeah, yeah. The adventure happened in 1995. The first version of it came out in 1996.
Wow.
Long time ago.
That is a long time ago. So fast forward to now, you've written all these books. You have this space now in Ahi, Mexico. This place is so special. And I've personally gone through a lot of internal stuff since I've been here. It's like all my shit's been coming to the surface that I didn't even know was there. Like a lot of self-judgment, a lot of stuff has been coming to the surface, and I've cleared it all. And I've moved into this space of complete bliss, like complete bliss that I can't even describe. I'm vibing so high that I was walking back from a restaurant the other night. I went out for live music by myself and I was dancing by myself. I didn't even care. And I was walking back and I was giggling and I was talking to myself and I was like, people probably think I'm high. On some sort of drug, but just totally blissed out. And to me, it feels like within myself right now, I'm surrendering to God.
Yeah. Well, this area where we live is a very special area. I know that you know this, but Paramahansa Yogananda, who was one of the early pioneers of people from, teachers and masters from India coming to the West, obviously wrote the famous book, Autobiography of a Yogi, which was the first metaphysical book I ever read. And he came to this area back in the 20s, and he felt that because he said that someday this area would be the spot of a major spiritual awakening. Well, it's been almost 100 years since he said that. And yeah, I really believe it's happening. Something has popped open here along Lake Chapala. It's not only Namaste Village, but there's other communities that have come about. There are many amazing teachers and other people who are coming here because they're feeling this vibration that you're describing. And yet, at the same time, it has nothing to do with where you are, but who you are, the truth of who you are. But obviously, being in an area where that's a priority, where there are a lot of people who are focused, I mean, yeah, of course it helps. How could it not? But you want to hear the story of how I first came here?
Yeah, I do. I was actually just going to ask you that.
Okay.
It's like, tell us.
Both to the Lake Chapala area and to Namaste Village. What happened was just over 7 years ago, I had decided that I wanted to live outside the US. Many of us are deciding that these days. And I narrowed it down to Mexico because I needed to get back to the US a lot. And I narrowed it down to 2 places in Mexico, both here and San Miguel de Allende.
Oh, that's where I've been looking too.
Another great place.
Yeah.
And so my daughter and I, we were going to first come here, and then we were going to go to San Miguel for 5 days in each place. And we came first to Ajijic. And after 5 days, I just said, what's the point? This is it. And I bought a house on the first trip, and it was amazing. And I moved in. I was only here for about a year. Then back in Portland, my daughter got pregnant, was going to make me a grandfather. So I didn't really have community at that time. I was pretty isolated. So I thought I may as well go back to Portland. I did. And I rented out my house. So about a month later, when I had to come back here and lead a retreat, I didn't have a place to stay because I couldn't stay at my own home. So I looked for a B&B, and I found this place called Angel Flores Guest House right here. And I rented a place, a room over, at that time it was a much smaller area. And the guy who owned it, Skip, he was an older guy. I could see he wasn't so much into running an Airbnb anymore. So I said, Skip, if you ever want to sell this place, please come to me first, because this would make a beautiful spiritual community. And he thought about it, but he wasn't really ready. So I forgot about it. I was in Portland. Year and a half later, I heard this Skip had passed away. So once again, I thought, he has 3 adult kids. They're going to want to get rid of this. Don't even think about it. And maybe a year and a half after that, I moved back to Mexico, was just going to live in my own house because it was vacant. And then one day I was just walking down the street and I walked by and I couldn't believe that there was still a for sale sign after a year and a half. And Todd, who was Skip's son staying here at the time, that very day had said, we need to find that guy who tried to buy it from Dad 3 years ago.
Wow.
Ding dong, there I am at the door the
Yeah.
same day. And I got it pretty effortlessly. There were 2 other properties, the one that you're on right here, and another one over here that I was able to purchase. We went from 11 tiny little hotel room apartments to 41 casitas or apartments in 2.5 years.
Wow.
Once again, if something is meant to be, we just have to follow the prompts and it'll just take care of itself. So it's been quite a journey. Sometimes I do think, what were you thinking?
Well, what I really love about it too is you were like, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
And I talk about finding the it.
Yeah.
And when it's not it, you'll always be asking yourself, is this it? But when it's it, there's no question. So you just trusted yourself and then you went all in.
And sometimes when you lose that and you start thinking, is this it?
Right.
You can just return to the original it.
Yeah, the first it.
The first it. And say, oh, that was it.
It still is it.
It's kind of like a relationship. You get into a relationship and it's great and this is it. But something happens in the relationship. It's like, well, maybe no, hold still. You don't have to run. I don't have to run from Namaste Village. See, the thing is, as you know, living here, living in community, if you've ever lived in a spiritual community or a big family, stuff comes up. It's meant to.
Right.
It stimulates that. And you can run away from it, as some people do, or you can run into it and know this is where the transformation is going to take place. So I'm just going to keep running into it, and hopefully you'll run back and be with us again.
Yeah, I'll be back in the new year. So if you were to, so we talk about waking up to who you are. That's something that I talk about all the time, waking up to the truth of who you are and who you're meant to be. You talk about this every morning. And so this morning you were talking about death, and you were also talking about just being you, just being your authentic self all of the time, or that was yesterday, and how we can get kind of distracted by different characters. I'd love for you to speak on that a little bit again, because this is just the human experience of just showing up and being, and you're talking about community, but also life. Most conflict it's all relationship to self or relationship to another.
Yeah. Well, first of all, where do we begin with this?
That was a loaded question. I was like, James, here you go. What do you want to talk about?
Well, okay, so there is that egoic part of our mind that I call the split mind that believes that we are separate, that we are isolated, and that we have to compete and conquer and all of these things that we mistake for being who we are, right? The identity.
This is it. Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Yeah.
And we think, okay, well, I am my body, I am my personality, and I need to carve out my little spot here in this world. But really the awakening is the realization that I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have a brain, but I'm not my mind. There's something beyond all of that, which I am. Now, the Moses Code is all about this. It's all about what I call I am consciousness, okay? And, there's the small letters I am, which is what I identify with in my personality and my identity. But then there's the capital letter I am, which is the name of God that was given to Moses 3,500 years ago, when Moses said, well, who shall I say sent me? And he said, tell them I am has sent you. And he was able to harness the energy of that name. in order to free the Israelites from bondage. Now, we are being called to harness the same energy by realizing I'm not that small self. I am, right? I am the same essence that was Jesus, that was Moses, that was every great spiritual master. There's only one thing that's happening. I always do, and I'll do it now because it's just fun. It's a good way to illustrate this. We talk about non-duality, okay? It's a strange word, but it's basically oneness, okay? Duality, which is how we usually live, and really how all religions teach it. It's always dualistic, right? There are two, good and evil, good and bad, God and Satan. Non-duality is the experience that there's only one, right? And I am contained within that oneness. So I always tell people to put their finger in front of their eyes like this. If you want to try this, you can. And look at your finger. Now, if you look at your finger, how many fingers do you see?
One.
Right, you see one finger. Now, I want you to look through your finger, like to the wall out here or whatever's on the other side. How many fingers do you see now?
I still just see one. Maybe I'm doing it wrong.
Okay, so look at the wall.
Okay, but this is over here. Like, is this right?
Yeah, just hold it there, but don't look at your finger.
I see two.
Right, you see two fingers. Now shift back your focus back to the finger. Now you see one again.
Yeah.
See, the point is, at no time was there two fingers.
Right.
I'm seeing two fingers. I'm experiencing two fingers, but at no time are there two fingers.
Right.
When I shift back and look at what's really happening, I see one. That's the most simple way I can use to describe what oneness is and what the awakening is. We've been looking outside, beyond the truth of who I am. And in doing so, I experience 2 or 2 trillion or an infinite number, always separate. But when I return my focus to what is real, I see only one. That's the experience of non-duality.
I love that exercise for doing it wrong. I was like, I only see one. I only see one. That's so true.
Well, but then again, there are those, you know, I wrote a couple of books and made a couple of movies about the indigo children. I would describe you as an indigo.
Okay.
You know, this younger generation that comes up and you know, people like me and people who are older than me who have been doing the work for a long time, building the platform, right? So you don't have to do the work,
right? Like
others before you have. You can just come right in immediately. So your mind has adapted to a more of an experience of singularity than, say, other people who have, you know. So it's a great thing. So the fact that you could only see one, even though I'm trying to force you to see 2.
Well, no, because I was like, I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to look. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Is there anything like a core message that you want to leave our viewers and listeners with today that feels important to share?
Just let your light shine. Don't hold back. No one is here by accident. You chose to be here at this time. So say yes and go for it. This is such an important time, and the time is now. And one of the things I said at our morning session today is then and when, but never now. This is the ego. Like the ego has 2 words that it loves and 1 word that it hates. It loves the words then and when, the past and the future. It hates the word now. Because now is the only place that the ego cannot project. See, the ego experiences through projection, while the soul experiences through extension, right? So the ego cannot project in the now, because it's now. It can only project in the past and the future, right? What it didn't get and what it wants to get.
And
right?
that's where most people hang out
Always,
most of the time, right?
Always, 99.9% of the time. But if we can just more and more step into the now, right? This moment, what is happening right now? Who can I be in service to right now? Who can I share my love with right now? Who can I be the source of what I want to receive in my life right now? Then it starts to happen on its own. So that's my only advice. Make that choice.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. And
thank you for being here. It's been lovely having you here at Namaste Village. And if people want to hear more about Namaste Village, they can go to namaste-village.com.
And I'll put more information below for the books and all things James Twyman. Thank you so much.